Bryan Danielson's music hits, and we are going to the championship match immediately. How much higher was your probability of the draw once you heard this music?
I mean, I think we had expected it to start the show off either way, because of the 60-minute time limit. I think no matter what, they want to at least create the idea that a draw would be possible, even if they didn't deliver it. And I didn't really see any other way of doing it when you already had three other matches promoted for this show, other than to put it up front. So didn't really change my perspective, but certainly allowed it to be a possibility. Yeah.
So they're both out. This crowd is super heated. AEW chants. The match begins. They're going back and forth between both men. And Bryan Danielson was at his cockiest in this match. The jumping jacks, I think, could be a regular trademark for Danielson coming out of this match. He's trying to frustrate Paige, even offering his hand at one point, and the crowd has none of it. So
there are a lot of heels who like to play cocky, but it works really well for Bryan because he is actually that good. It works especially well when the wrestler is good and you kind of hate them for it. You kind of hate it because you can't really, call bullshit. And Bryan Danielson is one of those guys who is absolutely able to back it up. So playing the cocky persona absolutely works for him as a heel.
The first target of Danielson was the left knee, and he used an Indian deathlock, then goes to body shots that are getting tons of heat. They go 15 minutes before we get our first of many picture-in-picture breaks during the duration of the match. And when we come back, Paige lands a fall-away slam, and dude, this crowd just so loved Hangman Page. He could sell for several minutes uninterrupted, and then when he blasted back with a lariat or any bit of offense, this crowd just was so behind him. This was a person they loved and a person they hated for 60 minutes, and the crowd pretty much was into it from start to finish.
I think they actually loved Bryan as well, but I mean, they know the part that they were supposed to be playing, and Bryan was a very effective heel. So, at one point there were as the commentators mentioned, 40-60, or according to Taz, 59-39 split between the "Let's Go Bryan" and "Cowboy Shit" chants. It was definitely a crowd that was appreciative of the both of them, but they were also, willing to play the part that they were supposed to.
I think off the top, you certainly had the 59-39, but once the match got going, it was definitely more, I think, one-sided with Paige. Because, dude, Danielson was in control of this for 80% of the match was him just beating on Paige, and it worked very effectively. We saw around the 20-minute mark, Paige's moonsault off the top to the floor, bringing in Danielson for a DVD, which was the first big cover attempt by Paige. Then he misses a moonsault and is caught with a Mahistral cradle. LaBelle lock gets stopped with Paige holding the fingers to counter it, and then the drop kicks in the corner by Danielson. He hits two of them. The third gets stopped with a pop-up into a sit-out powerbomb. Crowd goes nuts for this 2 count, and Paige sets up for the buckshot lariat, and Danielson rolls out, and Paige decides, I'm going to go for another moonsault to the floor, but he gets shoved off and flips over with his back. Actually, his shoulder, to be specific, lands on the edge of the apron with Danielson ramming it into the post multiple times, and this was a huge part of the match, the weakening of the shoulder to tell the story with the LaBelle lock later on as well. So this was going to pay dividends.
Mm-hmm.
Then after the shoulder spots, Danielson just goes into the ring and he's posing. The crowd is booing, and we get our second picture-in-picture. This is around 28 minutes in, and Paige is busted open. So the whole break, Paige is on the floor. Dr. Sampson is checking on him, and Danielson. I was glad the TSN did not deprive us of this picture-in-picture, because we got Danielson giving the middle finger to the crowd. He was cupping the ear, then doing the jumping jacks. He was just doing everything in his heel arsenal during this commercial break where there was no interaction between the two. It was Paige selling and getting checked on, and Danielson working the crowd. I thought this was great.
He was button mashing all the taunt controls available to him on the joystick. Yeah, I mean, it's a chance for them to rest, of course, as well. But I think as a picture-in-picture segment, I mean, you're providing a compelling visual and a little tiny picture for audiences to come back to.
Is that a category for the year end?
Best picture-in-picture?
Yeah.
If somebody dares to go back and revisit every single one.
It'll be that one you hated where we got the pinfall during the picture in picture.
Oh God, yeah, sure.
So they come back. Danielson targets the cut with a flying knee off the apron. And at one point, he's putting Paige's face into the turnbuckle, and they zoom in on this blood just like gushing out of Paige. Just awful masochist shooting this show.
Yeah, I mean, it, we somehow love seeing blood.
They love their blood, and they love the act of it like squirting out. Cattle mutilation is almost applied, but Paige is not down on his stomach, and he gets to the rope. Danielson then misses, kicking the post with his shin, and this would allow Paige to capitalize with a figure four. We go to another picture-in-picture. This was the one that Canada did not follow suit with, so we missed out on these 3 minutes. Paige then slams out of a triangle, but then Danielson gets it in tighter, elbowing Paige in the wound before getting to the rope, and Paige hits a tombstone. Crowd goes nuts for this near fall. We're starting to get to the 10-minute mark. Danielson has a gotch pile driver on the edge that's countered with a dead eye, and he uses the full 10 count to recover. Paige is not going to wait for the 10, so he leaps off the top, and this dude kills himself going through the timekeeper's table, and thus we go to another picture-in-picture. How did you find the commercial breaks? Were they hampering the match for you?
Not at all. You know, and this is a good time to kind of remind ourselves that there's a real art to television professional wrestling versus, you know, a straight match on a pay-per-view. I thought these two did wonderfully. You know, they led into every single break with, I think, you know, like a pretty compelling cliffhanger. And we see it all the time. Every edition of Raw. They're on the outside. Time to take a quick commercial break. But like for this one, there was obviously a whole lot at stake, but it felt like, you know, the commercial breaks acted as like really good chapter markers, you know, for this huge narrative that they were trying to weave. And, you know, they were big spots leading up to it too, and especially this dive through the table.
Yeah. So we come back, and during the break, there's a DDT by Danielson onto the exposed floor, and we've got 10 minutes to go. There's kicks by Danielson. Paige fires off lariats, but they're not as effective because of the injured shoulder. Commentary was terrific throughout this, and paying so much attention to this. Taz is really stepped up. I should just say he's getting more of a spotlight now that he's kind of a fixture.
I think for a long time now, he's been the best color commentator on the show. We know the circumstances about why he's on Dynamite, but I mean, in either case, like I think for a long time now, he's proven that he is the best, especially for a situation like this where, I mean, for the promotion like this, you know, that really treats its product as sport. He gives the most sport-like call for sure.
So Paige fires off these lariats. The shoulder is hurt, and Paige gets, the attempt is for a belly to back suplex by Danielson off the top turnbuckle. Paige manages to land on his feet and hit the lariat, and this crowd, dude, roars. It is just this gust of cheers for Paige. Danielson regains control, and he grabs the wrist to start stomping down. We're down to 4 minutes left in the 60-minute time limit. Goes for the Busaiku knee, and it is caught with a dead eye for a 2 count. Now Paige takes the wrist and starts stomping Danielson as the crowd is chanting yes. He goes for the buckshot lariat, but is caught in the label lock. He's got the injured shoulder. We've got a minute left, and Paige fights and fights. Danielson cannot get the full grip, and Paige escapes, slingshots Danielson to the ropes, skins the cat, but Paige nails him with one more lariat. Gets to the outside. I'm looking at the stopwatch. Are they going to stick the landing? Paige nails the buckshot lariat with seconds to go. Danielson is down. Paige is trying to get to him. 60-minute mark is hit. And this place, first they were just so upset that the time limit was hit, but then they all were just somewhat in awe. And the announcers, I mean, dude, they were immediate. I can't wait for the rematch. This was amazing.
It really was. Yeah. Anytime you get to see a performance that spans 60 minutes, in professional wrestling, I think it's a very special feat. No matter what the booking ends up being, simply seeing somebody out there engaged in some form of professional wrestling. I mean, we go crazy for like even 60-minute appearances in something like a Royal Rumble. This was just two people having a professional wrestling match, and it's that in itself is very special, and it's not something you can work. You have to legitimately be in outstanding physical condition, and you have to have incredible aptitude for putting together a wrestling match in order to be out there for 60 minutes and to make it compelling. And these two absolutely did that. And for that alone, I think, anybody who watched this live or on TV felt like they got something very worthwhile and incredibly special. They could have, of course, promoted something like this, hey, like Iron Man match. But I mean, we all know the criticism of Iron Man matches for TV. They tend to, tell people when to tune in and when not to tune in. I like this a whole lot better. You leave the time limit open. It could end at any second. They just happen to go 60 minutes. Considering the length, I thought it was incredibly well paced and well laid out because, I mean, we've gone through this year criticizing a lot of wrestling matches that have gone a lot longer than they needed to simply to fill time. Simply because, but they have limitations about how many matches they can put on the show. So let's make all of them 30 minutes. This was 60 minutes and I never got bored once. And I'm trying to think about the reasons why that is. And for me, it's because it was a fresh matchup, first of all. It was a matchup with a lot of stakes attached to it that was heavily promoted on a big event. And, like it was a finish that wasn't necessarily done for for kind of bullshit reasons, like we don't have enough content time. It wasn't done just for ratings, although I'm sure it helped. The quarter hours will be really interesting to study, but this was to me mainly done for storytelling and mainly done to successfully build to a compelling rematch. So all of that, I thought it felt like they presented something incredibly special.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the recent Nakajima Kano 60-minute match was just, I just thought that was a spectacular match. This one was, I mean, just watching it, I thought it was really impressive given that they had the handicap of the commercial breaks. I think that really does play a big factor. And it happens a lot when we see longer matches on WWE that I think the breaks, and granted, they don't really utilize picture-in-picture, it takes so much of the momentum out of the match. And then when we see maybe the same match verbatim on a WWE pay-per-view, it's received so much better when you just don't have that commercial interruption. So the fact they had that to overcome as well, and you had such a tremendous crowd for this that, I mean, from the second this match started, it was a rabid audience, and I thought they pretty much kept them throughout. And that's saying a lot for an audience that you're almost like tipping your hand that we're starting this show. This might not go 60. It's at least going to flirt with 60. And that's why I am not the biggest fan of the Iron Man concept. With this, it was, even if you thought that they were going to go that long, it's like that doubt of, will they do a finish with minutes to go? Mm-hmm. And all it is creating that doubt in wrestling is, to me, like, that's the sweet spot of when you can play with people where it's something they want, and maybe you're going to get the 60-minute time limit. It makes a whole lot of sense to do it, but maybe they won't. Maybe they will give you that finish, and you just have to create a bit of doubt. And I think they kept a reasonable amount of that, and it made for such a dramatic end, which, when time limits are done properly, it's so dramatic at the end.
So, if we remember the Bryan Omega match that also went to a draw, I believe like a point of criticism of that match was that they didn't announce when the time limit would be, or that like they didn't do the kind of New Japan thing where they would count down to the finish, and therefore, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was that match where we were all kind of discussing that.
It was, as I recall, it was announced, but no one could hear it.
Right, or at least like it wasn't done dramatically. They didn't do that here at all. I mean, other than the announcers mentioning, I guess, what is it? Justin Roberts said like
Justin Roberts did. He gave the 1 minute mark. There was an announcement of 1 minute left.
So I mean, I don't believe they really changed anything about the way that they did it, other than the fact that maybe more people heard it this time for some reason. Again, I don't completely recall, but I absolutely had like I enjoyed the way that they did it here. You know, like in New Japan, they would like do what 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and I don't think that was necessary. And I kind of like the fact that it, you know, the end of the time limit came out of nowhere here because it made you think that, oh, okay, they're gonna have Paige like pin him, or at least made me think they're gonna have Paige pin him like with seconds to go. Instead they didn't, and it came as a surprise. I thought the booking was very satisfying. You know, I going into even like talking about this match this afternoon, I doubted whether or not they would do the draw because I think it was important for Paige to get a first championship, like a first successful title defense for his first defense. But I thought the way they booked it was very satisfying despite that, because despite not winning, he gave a legendary performance already for 60 minutes on television. So that already in itself, I think it does more than just any of your typical championship wins. But secondly, he was essentially given a visionary win at the end. You know, like the idea, the story is if this match was 5 seconds longer, he would have won this match. And that to me was a brilliant way of, you know, having Paige feel like the victor without actually giving you the actual finish.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I saw some comparisons people made of this to like the Flair Sting match, the 45-minute draw at the first Clash of Champions, which was at the Greensboro Coliseum where they're going to be next week. In some ways, like I did look at it, like certainly Page is, I would say, much further ahead. I mean, he's your world champion in AEW, but this was kind of just that latest like cementing of Hangman Page in a main event role that I think everyone would look at, you know, Bryan Danielson doing 60 minutes. It was Page hanging with him for the whole time, pardon the pun, and being his equal in this match and getting that visual at the end that he had Danielson beat. I just thought this did so much in many different directions, not the least of which is the rematch.
Absolutely, it's a wonderful question. But before that, you know, somebody in the chat room is bringing up. You mentioned Ric Flair. Ric Flair actually tweeted out, "I've done so many hour draws, some great, some average. Tonight, you gentlemen set a new bar. The wrestling world can learn from at the Adam Page and at Bryan Danielson. Congratulations, woo." So there you go. Some a tweet in sentence casing, title casing.
That's
from Ric Flair as usual. But yeah, rematch. Where do you think it happens, and what sort of match do you think it will be?
Well, it's tough, right? Like it's like the only, like you have to have your championship at Battle of the Belts. And I guess we still don't know what the format of that show is going to be. But it's got to be no time limit, right?
God, like, I mean, is that the game that we should be playing? Like, you know, because when you say no time limit, it's like you're essentially kind of promising a 60+ minute match. And you don't have to deliver that, of course, but
I wouldn't do 60.
Yeah, no time. Like for me, I would personally be a bit more interested if it was like, you know, something with like a style variation attached to it, like whether it be a steel cage or, you know, a ladder wouldn't really make sense in this situation, but like something that would tell me that the style of match that I would be watching would be different from the 60 minutes that I saw here. But in terms of story, yeah, maybe no time limit makes sense. But where would you do that other than pay-per-view?
I think Battle of the Belts.
That's not a pay-per-view.
Oh, sorry. Like that's where I would do it. Yeah. I don't think you can hold off on this till March. Is that what you're saying?
But I mean, if they do a no time limit stipulation.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult if they have that 1 hour broadcast time, like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're doing it with the idea of teasing the 60 and you have Page win in that time frame.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and I'm sure like at this point they already have their idea in mind and are just perhaps waiting to reveal it. But I also wouldn't mind if they cooled off on this and had Page, you know, had somebody else challenge Page in the meantime. I mean, it's much like, you know, what we've got with Bryan versus Kenny, where you can kind of cool off on that feud for a bit.
Yeah, it's tough with the babyface to not give the guy the rematch right away. You know what I mean? It's one thing if it would have been like Omega that, hey, you have to go to the back of the line after the draw. But certainly you get to the rematch, and I think that's the only question of where you do it. But I just don't know if you could. What other challenger could you create in a like January 8th is not that far away for the Battle of the Belt show.
It's true, yeah. Or maybe Paige doesn't defend on that show.
How can you Battle of the Belts without your main champion?
I mean, it's still only scheduled to be an hour, right?
They have not stated what the length is.
Okay.
So,
but I mean, you can headline with a Britt Baker defense. You know, you can have your tag titles. You can have your TNT title. So we'll see. Let us know, audience. So what kind of stipulation would you guys like to see? Would you like to see another straight up match, between these two? How many hours should they go the next time?
A 2-hour match.
Why not 3?
Best of 3 hours. Yes.
Yeah. Have it continue.
At the end, we have judges that will grade each hour. Who won each hour?
Yeah. Sure. After this, if it was this quality, sign me right up.